What is up, Passion DJ Nation? It is your boy Mo Dingo out here at Dingo Farms. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode, and those of you on the YouTubes, thank you so much for subscribing. But don't forget to hit that bell so that way you get notifications whenever we upload new content to all of our YouTube channels. Want to apologize in advance for this week's audio. What David and I learned is that you shouldn't leave a MacBook Pro plugged in for a month straight without restarting it because you get some really garbage audio. It just wasn't good. We did our best to salvage what we could from the cameras, so please give us a mulligan on this one. But again, thank you so much. Wash your damn hands and enjoy the show. So what are we talking about? DJ stuff.
DJ stuff.
DJ stuff.
DJ stuff.
Yes. Welcome to the Passion DJ Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Dingo, and with me at his house,
Just some guy.
just some dude
Just some dude.
with lovely locks, though. Because the last time the nation saw you were in like a transitional phase as you were trying to grow that out a little bit.
Yeah. I'm like David Michael, but with longer hair.
A little bit more facial hair,
A little
I think.
more. Not a lot.
Not a lot.
I'm doing my best.
But working on it hard.
Yeah, I'm working hard.
Just keep feeding that beard.
Yeah.
So, you're probably wondering where we've been.
Yeah, we're here to explain ourselves
Yes.
of why the podcast has been so long since we published a proper episode.
Because Dave handed me the keys, and I just basically...
We're like,
I'm
okay,
in
we're
neutral.
making this big transition, and then there was nothing.
Then there was no
So we're
transition.
going to explain why that is and what we're going to do about it going forward. Just make sure, we wanted you, the listener, to make sure to know that the podcast wasn't dead. It was just kind of on a hiatus for a number of reasons, which we're going to talk about. And we'll also talk a little bit about what's been going on with Passionate DJ in general.
For sure.
Because, if you're a follower of, say, the YouTube channels, you know that, we have been doing things. It's been this show that's been a little bit hung up. So, we've been doing lots of, hardware reviews and news clips and performances and all kinds of stuff like that. So, man, it feels good to be back in the studio here and doing the thing, like the original thing.
Yes, that we all signed up for many years ago. So, I guess we'll go back to the transition. We have recorded some content. We're just trying to put it out. We've both been busy, respectively.
Yes, we have an interview and a performance coming from Chris Lutz.
Yes.
So, Chris, if you are watching, I will claim responsibility for that not coming out. Sorry about that. That's been delayed, but it's coming out next, right after this episode.
For sure.
Will be that interview.
And then, for those of you, I think you've talked a little bit about it on the show, about your wife's profession.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
she's like a super realtor.
Yeah, a mega realtor.
Yeah, mega realtor.
Yeah, she's such a good realtor. She convinced me to buy a house after seeing it for about an hour and it being on the market for about 2 hours.
Right. So, real quick before we get too far into that, so I have to explain because Trip Turlington's not here to defend himself, but we basically stole you away as Trip's neighbor.
Yes.
That's been a whole thing. That's
Yes.
been like, it's part of the Passionate DJ, especially the Passionate DJ podcast story.
For sure.
Has been how we all met, how you ended up next to Trip Turlington.
Yes.
And all that. And now you're literally 4 minutes
away.
from my studio here.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of horrible mean texts and messages back and forth between Team Turlington and Team Michael.
Yeah, Trip's wife in our little group text likes to send little fun barbs and she'll send little videos, but it'll have like Sarah McLachlan music playing or something, looking at your old house. But yeah, so right as I sort of handed over the keys to the kingdom, as it were, it just happened to be right when you went through this huge transition of finding this new property and starting that whole process. And, so on top of everything that I had going on and the reasons that I was handing it over, we never really got a chance to properly have that transition. I mean, we talked
about it.
Yeah,
a lot.
We talked about it, and we had a couple episodes with you as host. So
yes,
this isn't the first one. But then we just kind of both. You were waiting on me for some stuff. I was waiting on you for some stuff, and then I went on travel. You went on travel like 3 times each, and here we are. So we never really got into the full swing of a new
production schedule. Yeah, we had talked about like what we were going to do respectively, how Dave was going to help me transition and all that, and just getting kind of ideas for content. But as we were trying to nail that down, like we struck the hammer once, and then all of a sudden, like the summer's usually busy for me with like fitness stuff. But then on top of that,
stuff picked up for me with our
with
real
your
estate
business,
and all that. Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing because it's like, okay, we're transitioning to this phase where Mo Dingo is the host, but then it's like, it's not, I don't think people realize it's not just as simple as that, because it's like there are processes that have been in place for years now that we don't even know we need to change until we run into it. Right?
Yeah.
So like, for example, thumbnails is a big one. Like that's the one thing that held up Chris's episode. The next one that we're publishing. It's like,
you taught me how to do everything. You made a YouTube video for me. So if you're ever interested in starting your own YouTube channel for $19.95, David will give you access. Now, but he laid out this awesome, it's probably about an hour long.
Almost an hour.
Pretty much step by step. And it really gave me an idea. Well, it gave me basically the roadmap of how to do all this stuff. And except for one little tiny thing. And that's kind of been
the final steps of publishing and thumbnails, and then what happens from there. What's the publishing schedule for social media channels and all that. We left all that part. We're like, we'll pick up on that on the next episode, and then it just we never got there. So we're still going to be figuring some of that out. But yeah, the thumbnail thing was a big perfect example, because I was like, well, I'll just keep doing thumbnails for now. And then, I'll create a template that makes sense for going forward. And then I'll show you how to edit it, and whatever. Well, then we got to, just like happens anytime when you're working on a team and you have one person that's waiting for another person. As soon as you have that extra hop, you're going to delay any publishing process. You're going to double it easily. And the more people you add into that process, the more it's exponential, right? And so, this is a process that I've had to refine, not just with the podcast, but like with doing hardware videos. There was a time where, because we collaborate so much with the DJ Hookup, they would send us something, and then like some stuff was getting published to their YouTube channel, and so that I'd be waiting for them to get it published, and then they'd be waiting for a script from me, and then I'm waiting for a thing back from them, and it was going back and forth. And finally it was like, guys, I can't do that anymore. We're not getting this cranked out. And he, the CEO agreed. He was like, I need to remove myself from this process.
But he was really understanding, and that's, I know, because we had conversations about that, and I think we were all globally concerned, like, was he going to take that the wrong way? But I think once you explain yourself, he was really understanding, and to the point where he was like, why didn't you tell us this before?
Yeah. And it's one of those things that you don't know until you know. You get a certain point in, and it goes, oh, wait a second. Like I've found 15 problems with what I'm doing, but what it actually comes down to is these two things. I want to build my own YouTube channel, and I want speed. I want to be able to publish on my own schedule, not on other people's schedule. And once it was like, ding, ding, once that goes off in your head, then you can fix the actual problem instead of wallowing in all the issues you're creating.
The frustration
we're still going to have some of that for the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Forward. And even with the gear reviews, because sometimes those things come down and they're just like, hey, can you get this knocked out in 3 days?
Yeah.
And
got some of those coming.
Yeah, and you've done it before, but now with me living this much closer, especially with capturing the video content and stills like that, it makes it a lot more easier to execute. Yeah.
So, and you've gotten all kinds of new toys and stuff. We can talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty exciting. We took some pretty fun shots. Those of you watching on the YouTube version might see the DDJ Rev 1. I almost said Rev 7. The Rev 1 in the shot here. That's going to be our next review. It's probably, there's a pretty good chance it'll be up by the time this is published. If not, it's imminent. Mm-hmm. So we'll drop a link in the description below to my review of that. I think I can go ahead and say I'm actually going to have Fatty Lumpkin come in and do a scratch demo on it.
Yeah,
which, he knows how to do. Like
he knows how to do the the scratching.
Yeah, he does. He'll scratch on anything.
Yeah, for sure. It's sight unseen. Like I don't remember which controller it was.
That's why we call them.
Yeah,
here's the thing you've never touched before.
Exactly,
to make it cool.
And I don't know which controller was it where he just literally walked in.
The Rain 1 and the Rev 7.
Okay, that was the Rev 7. But yeah, Fatty will, like, when you see the videos and he's literally walking in the door right over there. Like, he's literally walking in the door and Dave has everything ready to go for him.
This time it's at least a product that was already out. And I say, hey, can you come over and demo the Rev 1? So he's not completely blindsided like he sometimes is when he comes in.
But it's still cool. And it just, I mean, if he's Dave Chappelle's DJ. I mean, must be pretty good, right? So if he can come in working on, he's used to working on like state of the art, industry standard, kit, and he can come in and he can rock a $500 controller. Mm-hmm. You can probably be safe to buy it for your kids for Christmas.
Yeah. Rev 7 was cool, and it's $249, I think. So I mean, it's
super reasonable.
It's wedged its way into my controller guide, and which means it's one of my top recommendations.
I believe it's the cheapest controller with paddles too.
I think you're right. I think the Newmark. I can't not say Mix Stream anymore. That's not right. The Newmark Mix Track Pro. I think also has paddles, and it's in that same price bracket.
Same price point.
But this is probably nicer. It does have displays though in the jogs with like BPM and stuff, which is nice. The Newmark does. But anyhow, before we get too lost in that, I do want to finish talking about kind of what we're doing going forward. So we're talking about. So we have this episode. We're going to have the episode with Chris Lutz, who was an amazing performer, super cool guy, former MMA fighter.
Yeah.
All kinds of cool stuff to talk about. It's been so long now, I don't even remember. You've been editing, so you probably remember better than I do. But it's a fun conversation with him.
And somebody who I've, oddly enough, kind of watched him grow up, because I've known him since he was 17. So I've known him for over close to a decade, and just kind of I forgot about the MMA piece, but like kind of watching him remotely and seeing to where he's got to now, and he's doing amazing. And, he's a hard worker, he's a grinder, and he's just he's a good dude, and does an awesome performance as well. So
and then did we, besides the annual show that we always do, did we talk about any other episodes, or is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then finally, to wrap the year up, we're going to do our annual holiday episode. We always do. We get the whole
group
together and do some kind of holiday show, and probably usually release it on New Year's. But since the past year or two, we've combined the Christmas show and the New Year's show. Or it's like, call it the holiday show and put it together. So we only have a couple episodes dropping this year, and then did we say starting January?
I think this is what we said.
Okay. Starting January, we're going to get on a bi-weekly schedule. So we'll release an episode every other week.
Yes, bi-monthly.
Bi-monthly. We're going to do 2 a month.
2 a month, yeah. Right. I can't do 8. I can, yeah.
We'll say two guaranteed a month. We reserve the right to squeeze an extra week in there if we want
for sure.
If it's a time-sensitive thing or something if we want. But that will be the pace going forward, which is what we kind of planned on anyway. Mm-hmm. It was every other week, but we're going to actually do it. And
I'll actually do it.
Well, yeah, I don't want you to take the entire blame, because it's not entirely your fault. It was mostly
my
timing,
fault. Yeah,
but I have a lot of blame.
Well, if your wife had made me buy that damn house, which I want to bring up, so yeah, it was like really crazy. We've been living in a place, and you guys have seen if you're a follower of the show, you've seen like where Trip and I live. We're next door neighbors, and big pasture and everything. And Stacy constantly would throw houses at us, just to kind of look at them. But there was always something that wasn't quite right. And this one just popped up, and it met like 80% of everything we were looking for. And
you looked at a lot of places for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much ever since Stacy started selling houses is how long we've been looking at. So we're talking like 3, maybe 4 years.
Yeah. Close. I mean, she's been at a little longer than that, but it's been a while.
But she was more intentional since she started her own brokerage. Is that
owns her own office?
Has her own office. Okay. And this one was super. It was in the price point we were looking. It had the right amount of land. It had a nice barn. Bit of a groundhog problem. Massive groundhogs. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with groundhogs out there, depending on where you're at, but like if you think of a golfer and multiply that by about 10, it's like the size of small dogs. Yeah, so we've had to manage that and fill in all the groundhog holes. But I think David was more excited about one specific aspect of the house, is that the person that owned it before us had a garage or a shop in there. Mm-hmm. So it's got concrete floors.
It's almost like its own wing of the house.
Yeah, it's an addition in its own separate wing, and I'm turning. There's 2 separate areas in that wing. I'm turning one part into my office, but Dave, I don't really think gave me much license in that. But I was pretty much told we're turning that into a studio. So the goal is to try and have like a standalone studio over there as well, where we can do some cool stuff in the future.
Yeah, we'll have 2 video studios within 5 minutes of drive of each other to create passionate DJ stuff.
And the goal with that isn't to necessarily recreate, this Passionate DJ Studios version 1, but maybe create opportunities to do other things. The first thing I thought about when Dave said that is like maybe doing some boiler room stuff. And if you're not familiar, like kind of look it up. It's a really cool concept where everybody's behind the DJ versus in front of the DJ, so everybody's getting down behind him. It's a pretty cool concept and something I want to try and do.
Then clearly, you're obviously a place to record a podcast that, kind of getting to my earlier point of, if you want to record a podcast episode, instead of waiting till I'm available or the room's available, you could do it or, whenever. I know that was huge for me, just building that space to just be able to turn the cameras on anytime and record is kind of critical for whatever my workflow is.
Yeah. And as punishment for both of you making me move into this place, you're definitely going to have to help me hardwire everything over there.
I got to hardwire Ethernet.
Yeah. I know. I'm the one that has to crawl in the ceiling because I know you're mad allergic to that stuff.
I'll double in size. And
but fun stuff. I'm sure we'll probably do some content out there, just kind of showing the evolution of that space as we get it ready.
So the idea is then on the publishing schedule, like that's still pretty much what we had originally intended, but what we've given it a little bit more direction now, in that we're going to sort of plan on a monthly interview and then a monthly crew show. And that will be at what keeps the pace. Not necessarily will be that every time, but failing any other, DJ Cryz walks in and wants, on an off week, we're going to publish that.
Again,
some of you don't know, we did have a DJ Cryz interview. I completely fucked up the audio on it, but it does exist. God, worst thing I ever messed up as a content creator. But anyhow, that hurts the soul. I think it's going to work out great because then it's like it gives us a reason to get all 4 of us in the room, and at least monthly we'll be getting together to talk about not only what's going on in our lives and all that kind of stuff, but what's going on Passionate DJ. So what have we published in the last week or 2? What are we about to publish? What kind of hardware have we reviewed? What kind of DJ news is happening? And, we can keep that sort of beat.
Yeah.
And then that gives you, on the off week that's not a crew show, gives you kind of creative license to do
whatever.
Some other show, whether that's an interview or, I say interview, but it doesn't have to be that. If Mo gets up one day and he wants to create some kind of epic saga, soliloquy, you can get up at 4 a.m. and record it. I'm not going to stop him. But
with the goal being someone outside the family coming in, whether we do it remotely or bring them in, is to try and fill that other show. So
yeah.
And speaking of shows, like it'll be really cool to get Tony back in here once he's done with his annual summer road trip. I mean, he's been to Charlotte, Kansas City. He's in they're in Oakland right now.
Yeah, people are used to Tony disappearing this time of year. He does that every year.
Yeah, but it'll be really cool because it sounds like this year was a little bit more interesting, and it's actually the first big road trip he's made post-pandemic with Prime Social Group. So it'll be pretty cool to hear about that as well.
Yeah, we've got, and I wish I could talk about new gear that we've got coming, but I can't quite yet.
Yes,
some embargoed stuff coming.
We've signed paperwork saying we won't talk about it.
Yeah, but we do have the Rev 1 coming. And then I have one of my ultimate guides that I'm putting together. I've been working on it for a while. So, I've got my controller guide. I've got my how to become a DJ guide. This standalones guide, which has been probably this year has been my most popular piece of content, is my guide to standalone DJ system.
Yeah, but the market collectively is moving more towards standalones.
It is.
Which we've been screaming for ever since I've been a part of the show.
Yeah. So that will be getting updates. I'm coming out with a Denon hardware guide, Denon/Engine OS hardware guide, new controller guide update. I'm going to release as much of that stuff as I can in January. And the idea is I try to release that as much of that stuff early in the year as possible, because then I can say best DJ controllers for 2023 and, you can promote it that way, because that's what people search for. And that way they know that it's constantly being updated, especially if I say in my voice and it's not just in the text, the title. You say, hey, this is your latest update for the controller guides, and here's where you can find the most updated written guide. So for the listeners who don't know, like passionatedj.com/controllers, passionatedj.com/standalones. Those are kind of my two most important hardware guides that you can go check out and see my recommendations for hardware stuff. If you don't have a specific review that you're looking for, you're just like, which one should I get?
Yeah. And also with the holiday season coming up, we know a lot of people, are looking to get their, significant other or even their children involved in DJ space. Yeah. Take a look at those resources. But also just hit us up in the DMs, and we're not too busy to get on a phone call. As a matter of fact, it's probably easier to hit us up and say, hey, can we talk to you? We're yeah, we'll do it right now. But publishing a podcast is a little bit more challenging for some bizarre reason. It's because we do it for the people. We love you.
Well, yeah. I will say one thing that I will take huge blame for, and the reason that this has been largely delayed is the podcast as a show, we're on episode 200, we're coming up 260, something like that. And, it's largely been an experimental show forever. And we've experimented with how long the shows are, experimented with interview formats, produced content, loosey-goosey content, all kinds of stuff. And a lot of those shows took a lot of planning, a lot of editing, a lot of whatever, research. And part of the whole reason we wanted to break the podcast back out, podcast is its own channel, podcast has its own host, all that stuff, is because I wanted the podcast to be able to remain a podcast and us not get lost in those details, because it's just supposed to be this. It's supposed to be us having a chat and bringing you guys into the room with us.
But it's also we were doing all these other things, and we, I know you had that decision point where well, do we keep it all together?
We needed to put the experiment somewhere. Yeah. And what we had at the time was the podcast. Well, now we've got all kinds of stuff. We've got hardware reviews and guides and
performances
and stuff. So now it's oh, wait, we can let everything be what it is now. We've created space on the shelf for all those pieces of content. Now we can just get in a room and talk and then publish it. And slap a thumbnail on it and put it out there,
and not literally have to worry about well, does it fit in? Are we getting too far away from center?
Right.
And now there's that clear line where John, if it's not a show, if it's not a podcast, it goes here.
Yeah, and
it's a podcast,
the audio listener has always been there. The audio listener has always expected this kind of show. the YouTube audience, we were probably confusing, which is why I broke it off into a separate channel.
Mm-hmm.
But now if you subscribe to the YouTube channel for podcasts, you know
what you're getting.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's good for the algorithm. That's good for the user. It's good for everybody. So I think going forward, this is all really going to work out pretty well.
Because there's a ton of you that have been following us forever, and you have a certain expectation. But once we started producing those live events, you know, and the performances, that's where we were starting to see a little bit of confusion with our newer followers, because we had never done anything like that before. So
yeah,
they were coming in and be like, oh, well, I'm used to seeing performances. Why is it two dorks talking about, you know, about something that doesn't excite me?
And even, you know, going way back to the early days of podcasts, you know, it's always had an identity crisis of what it wants to be, you know, and we've evolved from, you know, we kind of started out being very how-to focused and self-improvement focused and
tactics mostly.
Right? Tips and tricks, stuff like that. And we would weave in and out of that on the podcast, but then we would start doing interviews, but then we would start doing free-form conversations. Then we would start doing something really produced. And it kind of went all over the place. And now that all those kinds of content have their place, it's, you know, this can go back to being what it is. And we can go back to mentally realizing that podcast is pretty easy to produce. We are overcomplicating it. I am overcomplicating it. Right? So but you know, we've learned, as we always do. But since we're talking about it, those of you who are listening, or if you're watching on the podcast YouTube channel, make sure you realize we do have 3 channels. We have Passionate DJ Performances, podcasts, and then the main channel. So follow any or all of those that you're interested in. And if you want notifications to go to your phone whenever we publish new content, make sure you click that little bell. There is a reason that YouTubers say that annoying thing, please subscribe and click the bell. It really does matter. Subscribing to us is not enough to get notified when we publish something. If you want that, you have to click the bell. Even then it's hit or miss, so do your best. But yeah, if you're like hardcore, make sure you click that bell.
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about some of the upcoming hardware, what we got going on, performances, channels. We've got status of the podcast and what we've got going forward. What else do we want to talk about? Is there anything else? Any more life updates you want to throw in there?
Yeah, I got some ideas and things I want to talk about later, but we'll save it for a different show. But I'll just tell you this much: I had a bad gig.
Oh,
and I want to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we publishing this bad gig now, or are we saving it?
No, I think I'll save it because I feel like this particular bad gig deserves its own episode. No, but it just I want to talk about the totality of the entire gig, not just like the 1 or 2 incidences, but I just feel like it was a perfect storm of things that occurred that led it to it being a bad gig for me.
Okay.
So. Because, I mean, oftentimes when we do the bad gig stories, like, we're able to have people call and they just talk about 1 or 2 aspects of the event. But I want to talk about everything. Because it had me messed up, man. Like, I was really upset about this one. And I just kind of want to share with the Passion DJ Nation, like, what I went through.
Okay.
And how they can help avoid not necessarily walk into these types of challenges, but maybe just giving a cautionary tale so that way, if you DJ long enough and do mobile gigs, the situation I'm describing will probably happen to everybody out there. And so maybe just giving you some heads up on how to deal with it, or how I dealt with it, at least, whether or not it was the right way. It's just trying to be transparent, trying to help other people be better DJs with passion and purpose, so yeah, but it sucked.
So you're going to tell it today, or you're going to see?
No, I'm going to save it for later.
Oh, you're going to save it.
Yeah,
okay.
Save it for later.
All right. So how moved in are you over there?
It's not quite a box fort maze anymore.
Okay.
the last thing that we're going to work on is the studio, because the bedrooms are about 80% done. I need to. This weekend, the temporary office that I'm using for work, we're gonna transition all my gear out of that bedroom, so that way Melissa can turn that into her office. Because it's 4 bedrooms, so we're intending to have like 3 bedrooms plus her office, and then I'm going to be on the complete other side.
You get the wing.
I get the West Wing, as she calls it.
West Wing.
Yeah, with my office space and studio space. But also, I mean, she's going to actually start creating content too, but for completely different space. But it's for women's hiking. So if any of you lady DJs out there like to hike as well, hit me up in the DMs. We'll connect you with her channel, Aggressively Average Hiker.
It was like, if there are any female hikers, they would like to hit me in the DMs.
Yeah. My wife.
Really, it's for my wife.
It is for my wife. Yes, but if you kind of want to figure out what she's into, the Aggressively Average Hiker on Instagram.
Aggressively Average.
Yes.
And I was going to say, have we ever had Mel Dingo on the show? It was for like 10 seconds.
She was on episode 100.
100?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I barely even knew her back then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Mel Dingo's good people. Yeah, it comes with the name. It's a dingo thing.
Yes, it's a dingo thing for sure. And she tolerated me for over a decade now, so she must be very good people. But, yeah, talking about that creative space, making that, the goal is to make it modular. So that way we can turn the room. If we want to just, me and Dave, or anybody wants to come do an interview, then we can kind of just move some things out of the way, do a boiler room set, and then, maybe the next day we rearrange it and she can go in and create content. So just try to make it a creative space, and maybe at some point just open it up to people here in Miami Valley that are just interested in creating content, that don't have the money to go pay, what some place, I don't even know what places charge, but I'm usually good with bourbon, or bring me some porterhouse steaks and we'll call it a day. But yeah, because I know there's people out there that always hit us up respectively about wanting to start and being able to create a space or have a space where they can just come in and we can walk them through it, and then hopefully get to the point where either they just come in whenever and they schedule, or they create their own spaces. Yeah. So I've talked a little bit about possibly having some events at the house. Melissa might not necessarily know about this, but
if she finds out now at the end of a podcast, I'm not even mad. I'm like, hey, she was down, she was watching the whole last thing.
But in my heart and mind, I see a passionate DJ silent disco going down in the 8 acres out back. So
that'd be fun. I'd like to create some content around that.
Yeah, that would be super fun, because it's out in the sticks, kind of. Like, I'm close to Dade, but I'm further away from the city.
Yeah, I'm already kind of on the edge of our city, and then you're just like a little bit further
out on the edge. So yeah, especially
it's like simulates farmland
for sure.
You go a street over, and it's like, oh, there's civilization.
Yeah, there's a coffee shop. Wow. But I just think with there not being any noise challenges with silent disco,
right?
And being out there, I think it would be really cool. I think it would create some cool content as well. So
absolutely.
But don't tell Melissa. Shh.
All right. Well, I suppose we could probably wrap it there. Yeah. Is there anything else we need to? I think that's pretty much it. I kind of wanted to get this episode in because since it had been so long since we recorded the last one, I don't even know if it'll make sense. Some of the things we were saying,
mm-hmm.
There might be some timeline discrepancies that don't make sense. So at least
the space-time continuum might be a little bit hosed up, but we felt that we owed you guys an explanation of where we've been. You guys have been with us so long. That,
we're here, and if you follow us on YouTube, you already know.
Yeah, you already know.
For those of you who are, especially, some of you are OGs who are audio listeners, and that's the way that you prefer to listen to us. Sorry, we're back.
Yeah.
Don't go away.
Yes. But yeah, I think that's it for now. Short and sweet, but more content coming. It's definitely on deck. Coming at you for sure.
And Serato does stems now, so I guess we should talk about that soon.
Yeah,
probably bring that
Serato does stems, and
There's a new rain thing coming out everyone's talking about that you guys will probably know about by the time this is published.
Yeah, they're just dropping little bits of hints and yeah. So, but if you know something, you call us and tell us. Let us know.
Yeah, comment and tell us now, even though we probably know by now what it is.
Probably. With that being said, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you're a YouTuber, click the bell so that way you get notifications. Is that it?
I think that's it.
Okay. I'm Mo. He's Dave. Wash your damn hands.
Keep on spinning.
Peace.
They just like want to record a show, man.
I know. How hard is it? That's what she said. Oh!